Baruch atah
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Oh, well done. Okay, so let's see. We did the first section last time, right?
Right, I just missed the last little bit.
Does someone have a washing? Does someone have a washing machine on or a dishwasher?
Not I.
No.
Well,
Do you guys hear it?
Nope.
I hear something. Kind of faint, but not. I don't know exactly what it is.
Beaver's watching television down the hall, but that's a woman talking.
I can hear that too a little bit.
I'll X out.
Well, I don't know what to say.
It's not Judith, because she just muted and it's still there.
Now it's gone.
Michael, it was you. No, yes, it was you, Michael.
Do you hear it again?
Yeah, it sounds like running water.
I don't.
It's a cat purring.
Cat purring. Okay. Well, let's see if we can somehow talk through it. So, I think we did the first section, the introduction, and now we'll pick it up at the simple man and the clever man, learned trades. Can I get a reader?
We did that part, didn't we?
Did we?
Yeah. Because I was there for. Go down a little further, Kim.
Oh, you're right.
Right. Notice the clothing shop. Yeah, go ahead. Hold on.
We did Spain. I read Spain, the last paragraph on the page. So keep going up.
Okay.
Maybe there.
Okay.
Are you saying meanwhile many years passed?
I think that's it.
Okay. Fine, let's start there. So I still need a volunteer.
I'll start. Meanwhile, many years passed and he became even more knowledgeable on account of having been in many countries. He decided now it's time to look at the ultimate purpose. He began to philosophize about what he should do. It seemed to him that he should learn goldsmithery, which is a major occupation, a nice craft, entailing great insight and very profitable. And since he was such a bar Havana and philosopher, he didn't need to study the trade many years. Merely in a quarter year, he received the skill and he became quite a great craftsman, even more of an expert than the one who had trained him.
Okay. So what do you guess is the attitude towards this craft?
Well, I'm thinking that it wasn't he who decided he didn't have to do it many years.
Right.
It was the community or the other goldsmiths or whatever it is.
So there is a judgment from others that has reached a certain level of competence, even though it's much less time than normally would be the case. Mm-hmm. What does that say about his capabilities?
He's very clever.
Yeah.
And I use that word carefully because at the beginning it says, now it's time to look at the ultimate purpose. And for him, the ultimate purpose is being a goldsmith.
So
Seems strange, doesn't it?
It
That was very
seems,
strange. Yeah.
yes, because especially since right after it says that, he says he began to philosophize,
Mm-hmm.
and yet he still ends up with a craft.
Yeah. Well, but let's look at this question. What at the craft itself? What do we know from the Torah about being a goldsmith, being a genius artisan?
You
Well,
get to you
in the
get to build the
tabernacle.
temple. Yeah, you get to build the temple.
Well, you get to build the temple, and you get to be the Tzalel,
Right.
the master craftsman
Yeah.
who was involved not only with the temple but with the ark, the Mishkan. So we can look at this question of the nature of the craft in a number of different ways. What either, well, I guess I would say it implies something about some sort of innate genius in this person. I mean, to be the equivalent of a Bezalel, who is regarded as the pinnacle of, of the craft making, and particularly in terms of its application to purposes uh, of building uh, God's house, as it were. So there's
What
no,
is but what does being a philosopher have to do with him being able to learn the trade quickly?
well, what do we mean by the word philosophize? What does that what does that suggest?
Well, he would sit back and think about things.
Yeah.
I think it's a study of, like by definition, the study of knowledge, but I don't know how that would help him necessarily learn a craft.
And perhaps it means his knowledge is broad because he looks at things with a wide lens.
Yeah, in the old days, it would be a much broader thing, like a doctor of philosophy in this and that, we call it now. Like it's still philosophy.
So, how do you imagine this particular person would be doing his work? How, um, having learned this craft or skill so quickly, being a genius about it, what does that suggest about his standing? You know, when Bezalel was chosen, it was because not only could he do the technical work, but he also did the design. He also did. Uh, he knew and understood exactly what God wanted, um, even without being told precisely what it was. When Bezalel received instructions for a particular task, he was told in a general way, I want you to cover this with gold or something. But how to do it and how it should look and how it should be shaped and all of that sort of stuff was left unsaid in the text. Evidently, Salel understood on, on that level exactly what it was that God wanted. So the question of philosophizing arises in the context of having um, an understanding of what it is he's making that's beyond just the technical skill of covering something with gold or what have you. he's also a designer. He's also somebody who understands very deeply what it is God wants without having to get um, explicit instructions.
It,
Uh,
it's also interesting that he uses that they use the term after merely in a quarter year he received the skill.
ah, yes, that's a very good point. Why? What is? Do you think the significance of that language is?
Oh, I think he went to the market and paid to get the skill. No.
No, you've talked to
Well, you may be right, Michael.
No, I just
Kerry. You talked about how God gives us our thoughts,
Yeah,
and I like that. I've also been thinking recently about the place in the building of the tabernacle where Moses is asked to put the biggest pillar in, and he says, "I can't do it," and
yeah.
God says, "I'll help you. Don't you try, and I'll help."
Hmm.
So God is certainly assisting him in learning this skill.
Yeah, I think that where we might want to start off when it says that he received uh, the skill and the understanding.
Mhm.
This is a gift like the transmission of any kind of divine knowledge. Like how did Moses receive and understand the details of God's instruction in terms of the Torah? This is a miraculous almost uh, process that involving a kind of closeness between, in this case, the Bar Havanah and God, Him, her itself. There is a transmission of knowledge or particularity, um, which suggests a kind of communication that we normally wouldn't have. You could be a fine craftsperson without knowing uh, what exactly it is that you need to be doing on this level. It's almost as if um, the Bar Havana uh, understands the mind of God and therefore can work on a level that even a great craft person would not be able to do. Um, so there, in my mind, for what it's worth, this is about um, how it is that in some exceptional cases, an individual has an insight into the divine plan in a way that 99.9% of us never do. Whether we have the physical skill, in this case of goldsmithing, um, or not, the issue, it seems to me, is uh, even if you have such skill, what do you do with it? Do you know what to do with it? Do you know what's required?
Mhm.
In this case, that is something that this person has, but you couldn't normally expect. It's a level of of genius that uh, goes far beyond uh, mere technical skill.
Mhm.
So, okay, somebody's knocking at my door. Give me a break. Hello?
Hi, are you Marilyn Brown?
No.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
You know, there's a parallel between goldsmithing and Mussar in the way that
Okay, I would love to hear that.
you're taking what you're given, this body you're born into, and you're trying to make something. You're trying to refine it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Where do we find this kind of idea elsewhere in the Torah? Is it a reference to the refining of gold or refining of valuable substances? Well, um, when we uh, when the text speaks about the giving of the Torah, it refers to the the refining of the Israelite people, the that what they have gone through in terms of the wilderness and all of that uh, is a process of refinement. It makes them capable of understanding and receiving this knowledge. So it's a way of speaking about what the purpose or uh, uh, the end of the suffering or the lostness um, that the Israelites experience, what purpose that all has. So it's a way of talking about, um, I guess you'd say, the problem of theodicy. What what is why is it that these experiences that the Israelites go through, uh, and by extension the Jewish people goes through, why does God allow or even set up uh, experiences where they're going to be um, encounter great difficulties? What are the what's the point of having these challenges that the people have to go through? And I would say that implies on the implies something about the individual level. I mean, when we think about the question of personal growth, the idea that it is difficult, that it's challenging, that it's just hard to do, you have to ask yourself the question, why is it set up that way? Why don't we just receive the knowledge or the information that we need to have? Why isn't that just a gift?
Yeah,
Wait a minute. You didn't get it? It wasn't given to you? You've had to struggle? What's the deal here?
I was thinking about in terms of our kids. We all have kids, and you know, we have the delusion that if we just tell them what they should know, what they should do,
Yeah,
all would be well.
Huh.
and we do often try to just tell them, and as our grandmother would have said, "Nishgal," it doesn't help.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
just tell them somehow they have to learn what we all have to learn through stress, through challenge, and as uh, hard as that may be, it's a necessary part of the process. Being, we might say, being lost and then finding your way, or
But
meeting a challenge.
but even
Part of
even
being wisdom.
even in this analogy that they're using
Yeah.
here, I think is an example of it. I mean, you don't pick up a piece of gold and immediately be a craftsman. You have to learn how to do it. You've got to struggle through all of the things in order to become an expert. And why shouldn't that be true of everything?
Well, I think that is the point of the metaphor, and But if I look at people I know or even my own experiences, uh, trying to acquire uh, wisdom or deeper knowledge of who I am or who the person is, or what are the things that um, uh, get at the a deeper level of self knowledge. Those are valuable things that don't come easily. By definition, they don't. So, and what is the point of these challenges? It's that somehow they are integral to the process of learning and of growth. That that learning and growth don't take place without struggle. They don't take place without missteps and so on.
Right.
So it raises the interesting question of what is the purpose, or why is there um, to make a kind of a big jump just to sort of be able to get to the end of the thought. You know, the world is filled with uh, challenges or evil that have to be met and overcome. That somehow seems to be the process of growth. That the things, the obstacles that have to be surmounted are integral to the process. So going back to the old idea of there being a Yetzer Ra and a Yetzer Tov, an inclination to evil, an inclination toward good. In other words, the rabbis would say is that even the Yetzer Ra, why is it there? Why is it created? Because the challenge is changing, transforming the Yetzer Ra into something good in a way that's just as important, if not more important, than having the innate uh, capability to do and know what is right without that kind of challenge. It means something more to have achieved a certain level of understanding if in order to achieve that level there are obstacles that have had to be overcome. So there is a purpose to the existence of the obstacles and the challenges that we find in our lives, even when it comes to trying to do the right thing or to grow in the right way. Uh, Without the obstacles, we wouldn't be able to do these things in the way that we might like. So I think what I'm trying to say is that even the negative parts of life, um, if they're approached not as something that just needs to be accepted and uh, this is just the way it is, but that they can be transformed. That's the key towards growth and change in a positive direction. You encounter somebody who, whether they mean it or not, whether they're cognizant of it or not, provides a challenge to you or provides an obstacle for you. Um, the responsibility of the individual is still to take what you're given and to transform it.
But that's a fundamental characteristic of all life.
Well, yes, that's true.
I mean, even a tree has to grow its roots down through and past stones and find the right path.
Yes, So, why exactly? So why should it be any different for
Yeah.
us? It but you see, the thing is that we often think, and this is it's understandable, that if what we are searching for is a gift, it should be easy. It should be something that simply we receive and we have and we can
Mm.
operate with. But the gift is also to confront problems, challenges
Mhm.
that, and that is part of the gift. It's not, you know, it's a kind of, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Um,
It's a gift with some assembly required.
yeah, that's a good one, Michael. Yeah, yeah. Batteries
I'm
not
thinking,
included.
I'm thinking that the struggle is really important. When my kids were teenagers and going through their shit, pardon the expression, we were also going through the same thing. And fortunately for us, we all came out better. But if our kids hadn't gone through that struggle, we would not have been who we are now either. So it's uh, we, the challenge is, well, it's like crafting something. You can leave it
Yeah,
in the rough, or you can refine it, and that's the the refining with gold particularly, and is with fire, and fire hurts.
yes, and I think one idea that you find with some
Mm.
frequency in the Torah is that uh, the burning, the heating of these substances is part of the process of refinement, and that is an inevitable part of transforming um, a somewhat valuable substance into something that is truly
Yeah.
um, important and on another level entirely.
Now we're talking about the sacrifices, aren't we?
How do you see that, Kim?
Because in the sacrifices, we take something that's ordinary and we burn it, and we get to we cleanse or change or refine through
Yeah,
that process.
I think that's a very good point, because part of the the process of growth is the transformation of something that is ordinary into something that's special, and
Mhm.
it happens through this process of refinement.
And the smoke and the odor is, well, it's both stuff is lost and stuff is given to God, isn't it?
How do you mean?
With the smoke, is
Yeah,
that given to God? So there's a releasing of some things, a
yes,
giving up.
that's it's referred to in the Torah text in a variety of places, such as, for example, the sacrifice offered by Noah after the flood. This is a sweet savor for from the divine point of view. Well, I mean, I don't know that everybody would necessarily think about the odor from the burning of animals as a sweet smell. Um, Although, having a backyard barbecue might be an example. Uh, Smells pretty good if you're open to that sort of thing. But uh, the idea is that uh, the product of the burning, of the heating, is has a different quality to it than just the substance itself. And so if you take an example of goldsmithing, uh, all sorts of different levels of, of purity that gold has that you're working with. And uh, looking for the highest quality refines burning off the, the dross, I guess you would call it. That's part of the process of producing the raw material that is going to enable the craftsperson or the learner to achieve a different level altogether than if you just took the gold in its uh, natural state and tried to work with it that way. So this process of refinement or the burning off of the dross, even in a, a substance that is inherently valuable, is something that is a part of the process of growth. So the idea being that yes, gold is valuable, and you can shape it a lot of different ways. And one of the characteristics of gold is that you don't have to heat it all that much before it becomes a much more malleable substance. You, you the the basic quality of the gold is important, but there needs to be just enough of, of this refinement through heat so that the gold becomes something even more valuable. And thinking about that in terms of the human being, it's not that we are not uh, valuable in and of ourselves. We are, but we all require just enough of this process of refinement through meeting and overcoming challenges that turns us into something even more uh, beautiful, even more meaningful, and so forth. Um, it's important to bear this in mind because the idea is not that uh, we don't have worth as we are. We do, but you can't stay there. You have to have enough um of this refinement through heating, through challenge, through obstacle, to to get rid of whatever bit of dross is still there in us as uh, as human beings, imperfect human beings. So what the text is outlining is a kind of uh, combination of the inherent worth of the individual and the fact that even though there is inherent worth, it's not enough. But
Maybe we should read the next paragraph because that's
all
all
right,
about this.
yeah, okay, well, sure. Why don't we read the next paragraph?
Afterwards, he concluded, even though I have such a trade in hand, nonetheless, I do not have enough with this. Today, this is an important profession, but maybe at another time, some other thing will be considered important. So went ahead and placed himself with a gem cutter. And on account of his cleverness, he acquired this skill in a short time as well, in a quarter year.
So we have to we should not ever be satisfied with where we are.
Yes, and taking a different direction, as in a
Correct.
different skill, may be what we need to do from time to time. We run into roadblocks. They seem like the end of the pathway. And what do we do about that? Well, there is another pathway, and we might have to try that out. And the idea is not to condemn as worthless our failed attempts, but it's sort of on the order of that famous comment by Thomas Edison, that unfortunately brilliant anti-Semite. Uh, somebody asked him, "Aren't you frustrated by all the attempts that you have made to create the electric light bulb that have failed?" And Edison's answer was, "These experiments are not failures; they are successes. They have taught me all these different substances that don't work. That's information. That's knowledge. And eventually, you find the right substance to use for the light bulb, as Edison ultimately did." The idea of making mistakes or of having um, failures is a part of what is required in achieving any kind of growth, and that is in and of itself um, a valuable lesson. So even the mistakes or the failures have a place in this process. Bella, Bella, hey, sorry.
Okay, she's got an opinion too.
Oh, she has lots of opinions. No question about it.
And
So you think about this in terms of, let's say, what should, as it were, Bella, come here. Bella, come on. All right, I got it. All right, baby, we got it. What do we do with all the failures? Because we're going to fail many, many times. Now, I've always been found it very significant that Judaism's approach to holy texts is very different than it is in some traditions. We don't throw anything away. We have so many texts that are filled with conclusions by the rabbis that are not agreed upon as being the correct ones. But so why don't we just get rid of them? Why don't we just throw them away?
Even Moses hitting the rock instead of speaking to it.
That would be another kind of example. The idea is that something that might look useless or wrong or unproductive at one point might turn out in another set of circumstances at another time is being exactly the knowledge and the understanding we need in order to fulfill our goal of growth. It's so you keep everything, all the experiences, all the failures, as it were. I don't think Edison was quite that smart, but the rabbis were. So, yeah, the experience of failure itself is one thing, but it's even more interesting to consider that the conclusions that we draw or the lessons that we draw that are not ultimately accepted are not to be thrown away, because at another time they may be useful. They may reveal something that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. So the, the idea is that uh, the that failures are apparent failures. They're failures that take or mistakes that take place in a certain context. But when the context is changed,
We're just about to be done.
they acquire a different kind of value.
You said we're gonna leave at 1.
You don't have to be here at 1.
Are you okay, Michael?
Sorry, I'm gonna have to go a couple
Oh,
minutes early. Okay, I'm sorry.
that's all
All
right.
right, speak to you all next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Somebody's at the door. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to answer it. Pardon me.
Muchly interrupted. So your friend Thomas Edison also said, if you don't succeed at first, try and try again. I think that was Tom.
Oh,
It
really?
might have been. It would be much more succinct than he normally would have been. Give me a
Yeah,
second.
he had over 1,000 inventions
Yes,
or patents. Patents, I
and
guess.
each one of them involved this process of mistake after mistake after mistake, till finally the right combination was found. The right, uh, 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 a combination of factors and circumstances and so forth, which is important because for us who are trying to find something important in terms of how our lives ought to go, we're going to be in that same position. And if you want to avoid the outcome of giving up, of accepting failure, uh, you're not going to go very far. So, you read stories about the great Chachamim, the great wise rabbinic figures. Uh, they, they frequently talk about how they made mistakes and then surmount the mistakes. I think that's something to know, because that is not only what happens, but has its own particular value. So the knowledge that's gained from having tried many times, perhaps, and failed is different from finding out something that's easy to find out.
We also don't learn that well from our mistakes.
We don't.
We don't. As a species.
Well, is it that we don't, or that we can't? I mean, I think it's the problem that's being addressed here is our likelihood to fail to see the value in mistakes, or to understand that there's a kind of gift in the experience of meeting the challenge of an obstacle, even if you don't come to the end of the process of understanding, and we only recognize that we still have a long way to go. That too is a valuable lesson. So the idea that we would value our errors, it seems to me, is a part of the acquisition of wisdom. And not only because the experience itself helps us to persist, but that what we experience, the outcomes we experience, might only be incorrect in a certain time and place, but that in another set of circumstances might be much more important and valuable. So you hold on to your mistakes, because they may ultimately turn out to be a kind of truth that you would not have experienced otherwise. So that's maybe the ultimate irony of the process of learning. The all of our efforts, whether they yield positive results in the short term or not, all of our efforts have value. Now, you think about what the implications of that might be in terms of looking at ourselves and looking at other people in terms of how are they valuable as uh, human beings.
It's 1 o'clock.
I have to go.
Yeah, okay, right. We reached it to the dime.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, thank you. See you next week, I hope.
Yes, see you next week. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos, and we'll talk more.
Yes, Shira Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.